Good afternoon, everyone. We will begin in one moment. I'm just waiting for people's audio to connect, make sure everyone is in. I'm sorry, Katie, is my screen being shared?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry for the technical difficulties, everyone. Hello, and welcome to the FHWA webinar, The Role of MPOs in Transition Plan Implementation. This is the second of 4 webinars in the series Transitioning to a More Accessible Tomorrow. My name is Brad Allen. I'm a consultant with Applied Pavement Technology, or APTEC, and we are proud to be supporting FHWA in this very important effort. For this webinar, participants will be on mute. If you would like to ask a question to one of our speakers or raise a concern regarding any issues with the webinar, please use the chat box to inform the host. You can access the chat function in the Zoom menu at the bottom of your Zoom window. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can at the end of the webinar. Closed captioning is being provided. If you wish to view the closed captioning, please expand the CC button in the ribbon at the bottom of the Zoom window and select Show Subtitles. You can view a complete transcript in a separate window by choosing the View Full Transcript from the same menu. An ASL interpreter is also being provided for this webinar. If you have questions about the functionality of the Zoom meeting platform, please visit the website shown on the screen, and we can post that link to the chat as well. Please note the written disclaimer that's being placed in the chat box. To summarize, by attending or speaking in today's virtual workshop on ADA Transition Plan Implementation, you consent to be audio recorded by FHWA and its agents. Further, by attending or speaking in the virtual workshop, you also authorize FHWA to use, for educational, promotional, or any other purposes, recordings of or by you by FHWA without further notice or consent. By attending or speaking in the virtual workshop, you release FHWA and its agents from any liability arising out of use of any such recording. Please review the full written disclaimer, which is being placed in the chat box now. One more note, as I mentioned, today is the second webinar in the series of 4. The first webinar, which was held on June 16th, was recorded, and that recording will be posted online by FHWA at a future date. Unfortunately, we don't have an exact date for that yet. The 2 remaining webinars on July 14th, we will have a webinar on local public agency experiences in transition plan implementation. And on July 21st, the webinar will cover disability advisory groups' involvement in transition plan implementation. We will share links to register for these upcoming webinars in the chat window at the end of today's session during the question and answer. So with that, I would like to introduce our moderator for today, Ms. Kara Hogan of FHWA's Albany Division Office. Kara?
Thank you. Welcome everyone to the Federal Highway Americans with Disabilities Act Virtual Peer Exchange on ADA Transition Plan Implementation for Local Public Agencies, or as we'll refer to them, LPAs. My name is Kara Hogan, and I'm the Civil Rights Specialist for the Federal Highway New York Division Office in Albany, New York. And I'll be facilitating today's session, which is going to focus on some noteworthy practices of various stakeholders in support of LPA's efforts to implement their transition plans and comply with the ADA requirements. Today, we're going to focus on an exploration of the role that MPOs can play when LPAs, lots of acronyms, are implementing their ADA transition plans. Today, you're going to hear from Carrie Ward from the Capital District Transportation Committee, which is also here in Albany, New York, Matt Yoder from the Champaign County Regional Planning Commission in Urbana, Illinois, and Stacy DiLorenzo from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Now we're going to bring up our first poll question so that we can get to know all of you. Thank you. I think we can broadcast the results. Looks like a lot of MPOs are planning organizations and municipal and county governments. So great. Thank you everyone for participating. We also have a second poll question. I'll wait just a moment for that to come up. Focus on how your agency uses its ADA transition plan. Again, just trying to get to know you and how you use your transition plans. Great, thank you. Looks like we can probably broadcast the results. Quite a variety. So thank you for both of your responses to the poll questions. To get us started today, our first panelist is Carrie Ward. Carrie Ward is a transportation planner at the Capital District Transportation Committee in Albany, New York, where she focuses on accessibility, complete streets, environmental justice, and services for seniors and people who have disabilities. Please welcome Carrie Ward.
Great, thank you, Kara. If it's all right, I will share my screen. All right, so I'm here to talk about our experience with MPO involvement in municipal ADA transition plans. And so my perspective is coming from the Capital District Transportation Committee, which is the MPO in Albany, New York. Yeah. I am now having difficulty advancing. If it's all right, I'm gonna stop the share and then reopen it. Sorry, everyone. I'm on 2 machines and with double monitors, which I've never used before. Brad, I think I'm going to have to ask you to share my slides for me.
Sure thing.
Actually, did that just advance? Nope. Brad, are you sharing my slides? Because I'm on my other device now. I'm looking at the slide that I wanted to be on.
Yes.
You didn't do that? Okay.
No, I did.
You did that?
I am sharing your slides. Yes.
Okay, great. So what got us started really in transition plans was a training that Federal Highway and our state DOT did in June of 2014. The target audience for that was MPO staffs from external transportation agencies and also larger municipal sponsors. So some of the staff from our cities and towns that have larger populations attended that. And we heard from them that it was eye-opening in two ways. One, that pedestrian facilities are a program, and so the ADA applies to them. But then also that PROAG was providing guidelines that could be used to define what accessibility on the public right-of-way is. And even though PROAG isn't, and at the time wasn't formally adopted, our state had adopted them. So it kind of made them realize that they probably should have a transition plan, which led to a concern about the comparative impact of municipalities across municipal borders on their taxes, and then on economic development potential. And so basically there was a concern that there would be a political problem with committing to making substantial improvements in sidewalks because it would affect those things. Next slide. So really our members asked us to create a working group, which at the time was envisioned as a one-year effort. And that was, we first met in March of 2015. We have been able to work through some of the issues that seemed to be inhibiting willingness or ability, depending on the staff person's level, to create a transition plan for pedestrian infrastructure. We have gone around and back and forth, and so it's not really a linear process of moving forward because there's always different municipalities or different staffs that have come to our meetings. But we did initially have a work plan that we set out, and we accomplished those things. So those are listed here. They wanted to research funding, so like outside funding, grant sources, and then also financing within the municipality, particularly where property owners are legally responsible for the sidewalk itself, not just clearing the snow off of them, but they also wanted to look at snow clearance methods, like physically removing the snow, and also methods of enforcement for most of our municipalities, which have in their local codes that the property owners are responsible for that. And then they wanted to look at like the difference between the specifics in ADAG and in PROAG. Some of them thought that they were compliant with ADAG, and so they wanted to know like what was the difference, and if they were to just so they could maybe go out and just check the things where there's difference between the two. They really wanted an official letter that this was a requirement, specifically from the state DOT. We were not successful in doing that, so we did send a letter to all of our members in 2015, just telling them that it's a requirement. They wanted to talk about undue burden. Basically, can we just say everything is an undue burden and then we don't have to worry about it? Or like where on that continuum is the definition of undue burden? What kind of what would be acceptable for an implementation timeline? Could you say we have a transition plan and we're going to fix it all in 300 years, or, you know, how far down do you have to go? And then the acceptability of the state process. So our state had done their own transition plan, and they put together a very simple methodology to rate the accessibility of their sidewalks. It's just a 1 to 5. And so we talked a lot about methodologies, but they wanted to know basically if that would be acceptable, and our federal partners were able to say yes. So that was really useful guidance for them. And then they wanted to survey the municipalities and then create transition plan template for municipal use. I'm going to talk about both of those on later slides. So next. Okay, so these are just some useful resources for us that I thought could be useful for other people. The Department of Justice settlement agreements through Project Civic Access. I don't know how up to date that is, but I know the DOJ website does still have listings of settlements that have been signed across the country. We compiled a bunch of them that were on Project Civic Access into like a spreadsheet, just to communicate to people that what seemed to be consistent was that if there was an investigation and they weren't compliant, that they had to fix all of their sidewalks within 3 years. And so that was motivational for them. Legal Research Digest on the liability aspects of pedestrian facilities. For most of them, that wasn't really relevant, but a number of times engineers or planners would be talking within their municipality, and the council's office or legal staff would hear about it, and they would come up with reasons why it was a bad idea to do a transition plan. And so this Research Digest was something that they could give to them for them to read on their own. And then the DOJ, DOT Joint Technical Assistance on curb ramps was just something that they found really helpful. Next. So municipal surveys, we did one in 2015 when we first started, and then we did one in 2018 after we thought that we had dealt with a lot of the issues that people had. So it's like before and after. The things that we asked people about was the existence of self-analysis and transition plan elements, because we were pretty sure they didn't have condition inventory, but we weren't at all sure what other parts, what other required elements they had, to assess what kind of data they had. And we learned through that that most of them didn't know where their sidewalks were. So overall, I think the surveys were really not useful from a data standpoint, but they were a useful tool to start conversations. Next slide. All right, so because pretty much nobody knew where their sidewalks were, we decided at the MPO to collect an inventory of sidewalks. And we specifically called it the presence absence, just so that it was really clear that we were not collecting conditions of the sidewalks or of anything. So this was an effort with MPO staff and heavily reliant on interns. It took us about 3.5 years to do over 1,200 miles, and over 200 of that, we already had centerline when we started. So that in one municipality, so that one went a lot faster. We mostly used online, like Google Street View and ortho images. But we did go in person in a few small villages. When we first started, we weren't able to find really good data, and it was, you know, in a small village, it's easy to walk around and collect all of them. Anyway, the data points that are in that are the route number, if there is one, the name of the road, the side of the road, the start and end points, the surface type, which is brick, asphalt, concrete, or slate. If it's covered in grass, that went in the notes, and then the length. So if you use GIS, you probably recognize that some of this isn't really necessary as an attribute in the table, but we had a lot of municipalities that don't have GIS or don't want to have GIS. And so we sent them the data, but we also sent them like summaries and an Excel spreadsheet so that they would at least have something usable. And then we sent them all that with a letter, again, explaining the transition plan requirements. Next slide. All right, so this is an image. The black parts are sidewalks and the gray is roads. And I think this is helpful to see because it shows that the sidewalks are really clustered in the areas where there's more roads, you know, cities and villages, with some arterials also having sidewalks on them through more suburban areas. Next slide. All right, so transition plan templates, something that they wanted us to kind of agree on something that everybody could use. So we reviewed a lot of them. There's a lot of different kinds. FHWA suggested looking at the Ontario County, New York one, which is the image here, the one behind the other one. It's just 4 pages of text, and it says what they're gonna do. So it like definitely doesn't have a condition inventory in it. And the state DOT also provides one specifically for sponsors of local projects for which they get funding through the state. And the question of the condition methodology was a big one. So we wound up recommending that our members just use the Ontario County, New York one to at least get something done and help a little bit communicating within the municipality that they really should do a more full transition plan. Next slide. All right, so the condition methodology is what we spend the most time talking about. What elements should we score? Sidewalks, curb ramps, crosswalks, pedestrian signals, multi-use paths, bus stops. What format of the data should be in? We realized that it's generally in some kind of a mapping application. And for us, we were leery about proprietary applications and the ability to use that data in the future. And then we had a general concern about usability because we have municipalities with limited technology. What data points you're collecting for each element greatly impacts the amount of time that you need. So we did look at some high-tech options because it enables you to collect a much more complete data set, but it also increases the skill of the person collecting the data, and then that increases the expense. So in the end, after months of going around and discussing this, we ended up recommending that the locals follow the state DOT's method, which is very simple. Their method is it's basically a 1 to 5 rating, with 1 being that it doesn't exist. So as we were talking about this, 3 of our municipalities actually started doing their own inventory without any of our assistance. One of them used staff from their DPW to collect the data with some input from their planning department. One of them used an intern who was guided pretty much only by the planner. And then one of them used an intern that was guided by their risk and safety manager. Also, one of them had sought consultant assistance from a firm that has done a number of transition plans, in a high-tech manner, and they ended up deciding against allocating the funding that would have been necessary for that. And the image here is from an inventory of a municipality that had started their own ratings. The purple lines are sidewalks. So we had collected that data, so we provided it to them. So that's why they're lines, but their system otherwise only had points in it. They could only collect point data. So the crosswalks and the curb ramps are both dots, which is not ideal. And then since they didn't already have them, they were collecting the location data in the field as well as the condition data. and they didn't have a data plan. So without the data plan, the data was being stored locally on the device until they got back to wireless. We realized afterwards that it resulted in the points being very much not in the right locations. Next slide. Okay, so common trends in our municipalities making their own methodologies was that they were using tablets. They had data plans, or they should have had data plans. They did come up with pretty simple methods of the data points that they were collecting and the tools and equipment that were necessary. They were using map-based tools, and there was a lot of intern use. And the image here is of another one of our municipalities that developed a system that enables them to visually spot base their retrieving their data, and it includes an image of the element. So they found that was really helpful to be able to look back and see the context of the location when they, if they got a public complaint or something came up about a particular location. Next slide. Okay. So one other thing I wanted to say was for the 3 municipalities in our region that did collect their own data, they, in terms of the residents who live there, have a really low poverty rate. So that's higher income residents. And so we wanted to try and push the more municipalities in our region to do the condition inventory. So we, after a few years, did actually release an RFP to solicit for consultants to do transition plans for us. We released that last year in January. And we did, when we suggested that they use the state 1 to 5 for sidewalks, but otherwise we requested them to propose their data collection methodology. And we did specify in that the municipality is responsible for the public input. So applicants proposed to us without knowing their work locations, because we hadn't done a solicitation yet for the municipalities that were going to participate. But we did allocate $75,000 over 2 years, which was based on one of the municipalities that had already done their inventory and the number of sidewalk miles that they had. And I knew how many hours it took them. So that was an estimate if at that rate, how much money we thought we would need paying the intern $15 an hour to do data collection in the municipality that has the most sidewalks in our region. And we estimated that it would be 2 because we have a lot of municipalities that barely have any sidewalks. Next slide. So we received 3 proposals. That is a low number for us, but our RFP was pretty amorphous, and I think that made it less likely for people to apply. And from our research, it seemed like there was a lack of experience among firms in doing transition plans. I did want to note the proposals were due at the end of February last year, so that was actually before the shutdown in New York for COVID, so I don't think that COVID had any impact on the number of proposals that we got. There was a tendency for exactness in our proposals in terms of the measurements that they were going to do and also the cost estimates, which didn't really seem necessary to us because, if it's going to take you a lot of years to do your repairs, then you don't really need exact cost estimates on what it would cost to fix all of the elements this year. Yeah, so we saw simplicity. This image here is part of the table. I think it's actually from the state sidewalk collection. And I did want to include it. So that's like the 5 and the 4 categories, the good categories, because they include text description on what that category is, but also images. So for the training of the people who are going to do the data collection, we've found that it's really helpful for them to have both. Next slide. Next slide.
I think Brad got kicked off.
Oh. Well, I can keep talking, and then if he comes back, he can rejoin us with the slides because I have my notes printed out here. So after we solicited for the consultant contract, so that rating system was from the New York State Department of Transportation. So after we solicited for the consultants, we released a solicitation for municipalities to participate with us. We did include match in that, both cash and in-kind staff time. So if they provide more match, we rate them more highly to select them, but we specifically did not require any minimum cash match because we were trying to be accessible to the communities who were lower income communities that tend to have a larger sidewalk network. And then we're really clear to our municipalities that they need to start thinking about the stakeholders that they're going to involve, when they apply to us, and that we are going to require them to do the bulk of the work with the organizing of the public meetings, although our consultant will provide the materials for that. So once we're working with our municipalities, we talk with them about the other components besides the condition inventory. So if they have a coordinator, public notice, grievance procedure, we'll include that for them if they want to. We think that most of them have like a really old transition plan, but sometimes they can't find it, and sometimes they just rather make a new one. Other times they just kind of say that they're updating the old one with pedestrian infrastructure. In terms of stakeholder meetings, we try to hold one toward the beginning of the project just to outline it and seek guidance, and then one of them toward the end once the data is already collected, to confirm the prioritization criteria that we're going to use for when to make what improvements. We specifically recommend including seniors in that, even if they don't identify as people who have a disability, because they often do, even if they don't identify as such. So I'm on the municipal process slide. Okay. And then this, we do technical training for whoever's going to be collecting the data with us. So our consultant has been using interns to collect some data, but we try to get the municipality to also collect data. It's good for our budget, but it's also good for them to have somebody on staff who's really familiar with that data collection methodology. And then in terms of public meetings, we've been recommending that they include it as an agenda item on something else that people would otherwise be interested to go to, and not as a separate meeting, because we've seen that lots of separate meetings, unless it's a controversial thing, just results in less participation. And then this image here, is one of, it's called Survey 123, which is an Esri product. And I wanted to show it because for these data points, we're first collecting the location of the item because we don't already have a data set of that. And then it asks about the accessibility of it. Next slide. So data collection hardware and software, we are, so far we've been successful in being able to use devices that have both internet and data plan and GPS. You do need ArcGIS online credentials. That's all I can say on that. I don't really use GIS to that level, but I know you need the online credentials. And then we've been using two apps with two Esri apps. One of them is ArcGIS Collector and one of them is Survey 123. And I think the reason for that is really that some of the data we already have mapped and some of it we don't. So this image here shows sidewalks and trails, which are linear. And they were already existing in the map. We already had the data, so we just needed to collect attributes on them. So as people were collecting the data, they would be able to, they'd see like where they were near, and they'd be able to click on the item and enter the condition. Next slide. Okay, so data collection points, we did do a simple 1 to 4 for sidewalks, which is basically the same as the state, except we didn't assign a score for something that doesn't exist. And then for curb ramps, we have focused on detectable warning dimensions and contrast of those. For pedestrian signals, the type, whether they're visual, audible, or both, and then the access dimensions spatially. Transit stops, the access dimensions. We have been including transit stops if they are connected to pedestrian infrastructure. And then for crosswalks, the condition or the type of the elements of the surface, the measurements. And this image shows a map of the crosswalk locations that are color coded down to a 1 to 4 rating. So even though we were trying to be simple, we wound up collecting more information than just 1, 2, 3, 4. So when we're presenting it to the public, they developed a way to combine them into more simple 1, 2, 3, 4, which they can easily color code. Next slide. Okay, lessons learned. Somebody should read Title II of the ADA and PROAG. There are some kind of simple seeming things that just repeatedly come up that people don't understand. And if you don't kind of nip that in the bud, it can just lead to much more confusion. One of them is that there's a difference between compliance with the ADA and planning. Yes, it would be great to have sidewalks everywhere, but that's not what a transition plan is looking at. Simple really is more doable. The reason we went back and forth so much with what kind of condition inventory we wanted to do with our advisory group was because it just seems really nice to have more data, but then nobody wants to actually do anything because it's overwhelming. Notification from an enforcement agency would be really helpful, I think. There are jurisdictional issues among levels of government in terms of whose road it is and who's responsible for the sidewalks, and it's really helpful to not have to discuss that and to just know, to figure out what the rule is. And then jurisdictional issues with property owners as well, particularly if there are local laws specifying that all of the maintenance responsibility belongs to the adjacent property owner, because there are political realities with that. And then some of the stuff that we were doing didn't end up being useful for what we thought it was going to be useful for, but wound up being an opportunity to educate. Next slide. All right, this is my last substantive slide. I just wanted to include a little bit about ADA in the general MPO process, so not specific to our work with local agencies doing transition plans. So one of them is, as we started to work with our working group, we realized that we actually didn't have a self-analysis and transition plan for our office, at least for our current office location. And then also our transportation improvement program had already included in the merit evaluation half of it, a small section on accessibility. So the table here shows that there's a description for it, and it goes up to 2 points or down to -1 point. So you can get negative points if you're, for some reason, this has never happened yet, but if for some reason they were going to reduce accessibility on the roadway. And we are actually in the process of updating this right now and proposing to strengthen the language in terms of not just that they're improving accessibility, but they're improving accessibility as per their transition plan to try and encourage them to do transition plans. And last slide. And that's just my contact information.
Great, thank you, Carrie. That was a great presentation. And I know there were a lot of questions in the chat pod, which some of those were answered already. So I'll quickly just cover a few of the unanswered ones. And while I do that, I know that Brad indicated he would re-show the sidewalk rating slide. So I'll also give him a chance to do that. The first question was the 2014 training recorded? And I actually know the answer to that because I helped conduct that training. And the good news is, even though it was not recorded, it is consistent with our Federal Highway Administration Resource Center training on ADA requirements. And I think Carrie will agree, we highly recommend reaching out to your Federal Highway Division office to request this same training because it was very helpful. But now I do have a few questions for Carrie. Carrie, could you speak to how you worked through some of the snow clearing as it applied to this effort? The exact question was, what is the snow clearing method? Is it for seniors and others? How did it work? How was it improved? Any information you could give on how that interfaced with your ADA efforts would be helpful. Thank you.
Sure. The shortest answer is it doesn't. We haven't been including it in the work that we're doing, and I don't believe the municipalities in our region that did their own transition plan included any recommendations about changing the law or changing anything related to snow clearance. I will say, as part of this and part of input that we got from our coordinated plan human services agency, for those of you at MPOs, and through our equity and environmental justice task force, we have started but not finished trying to amalgamate all of the local laws and business improvement district policies and other jurisdictions that change what the snow clearance procedures are, just as a public information point, because I think a lot of the time, a lot of the frustration comes to people not knowing who to call when the sidewalk is not clear. So sorry, I know that doesn't really answer the question, but that's as much as I can say on that.
Thank you, Carrie. I saw that Sharon did respond to this question broadly in the chat pod, but from your perspective, Carrie, could you provide more detail about why your MPO decided to get involved in supporting local transition plan efforts?
Sure. So we initially got involved because our members asked us to. And at that time, we staff had floated the idea of doing or substantially helping municipalities do their transition plans. And we decided internally not to do that for expense reasons, but also because I think there was a discomfort with helping municipalities comply with a law. Basically, they just need to do it. So why should we be helping them do it? I think was sort of where the discomfort came from. But I think what helped us get over that was that our members, because of the concern about taxes and economic development and just the realities of where the sidewalks are in the region, our members, or the working group members, wanted to try and come up with something, with a transition plan template, and they wanted to agree on a condition methodology that we could all use, and that is where it's easier to make an argument that the MPO has a role in that. So, you know, because we are helping other municipalities do their transition plans, we're basically giving them the methodology that we came up with, and we're kind of using the same template for the transition plan language. So it helps ameliorate some of those concerns that we were hearing from staffs at local agencies.
Great, thank you. I see that there are a lot more questions, but I do want to save them till the end, just so that we know we have time. I'd like to turn it over to Matt and Stacy. Matt Yoder is the Data and Technology Manager at the Champaign County Regional Planning Commission. He's an experienced software developer, urban planner, and data analyst, and he leads a small team that builds civic technology for urban planning and transportation. Matt joined the commission in 2014 and has worked on projects related to pedestrian accessibility, bicycle planning, public outreach, and online tool development. He's an advocate for using open source software to increase transparency and efficiency in government. Stacy DiLorenzo has been in the position of Transportation Demand Management Coordination for the UIUC since 2013. She oversees the transportation network infrastructure for university-owned facilities, programs, projects, and planning. This includes sustainability, maintenance, master planning, and connectivity to the surrounding community transportation networks. Stacy is the university liaison for coordination of city and private developers' construction projects within the university district and leads development of strategic transportation proposals in support of university, community, and national priorities. Please welcome Matt and Stacy.
All right, thank you, Kara. Today, I'm going to present a data collection effort that we started in 2014 to assist communities in Champaign County in developing and updating their ADA transition plans. I'll give you the MPO perspective and talk about how the data collection process works, and then Stacy will talk about the local agency perspective and how the data are being used. The Sidewalk Network Inventory and Assessment is a collaboration between several local and state agencies. As the MPO, CCRPC is the lead agency, and if you look at any of the materials for this project, you may also see the name Champaign-Urbana Urbanized Area Transportation Study, or CUATS, which is the transportation planning group within the MPO. For this project, we partnered with the Illinois Department of Transportation, the University of Illinois, and several municipalities. And all of these agencies participated in the working group that guided the data collection effort. There were really two goals for this project. The first was to create a consistent database of sidewalk network features that would allow us to measure and track accessibility. And the second was to provide the local agencies with the data they need for the transition plans. As we just heard, the transition plans require a lot of field data. And for our region, it was decided that it would be more cost-effective to do that data collection in a coordinated way through the MPO, rather than having each agency do its own data collection. The initial study area for the project was the Champaign-Urbana Urbanized Area. It includes 5 municipalities with a combined population of about 150,000 and about 700 miles of sidewalks. We collected that area during the first 2 years of the project, and that work was funded by an IDOT Technical Studies grant. In the last few years since then, we've worked with 2 outlying villages to expand the study area, bringing the total sidewalk length in the inventory to about 825 miles. There are 4 types of features that we're collecting as part of this project: sidewalks, curb ramps, including not just the ramp itself, but also the detectable warning surface, the landing, the gutter, left and right approaches, and any curb flares if they're present. We collected crosswalks, including those marked by a sign or paint on the street, and then pedestrian signals, including those with and without push buttons. Since the primary goal of the project is to evaluate ADA compliance, we're measuring variables covered by the ADA and PROAG standards, things like width and length, running and cross slope, whether there are any obstructions, and detectable warning surfaces on ramps. I won't go through kind of all the details of what we collected, but later on, I think there will be a link to the report document where you can see all the details of the specific fields. All of the measurements that we took as part of the inventory were selected based on input from the participating agencies, and we really valued kind of their input in designing this process. We're also looking at the condition of the pedestrian network, so things like number of cracked panels, number and size of any vertical faults, whether there are things like dirt and grass covering the surface, and any other surface condition issues like spalling of the concrete. There are four main tools that we use in collecting this data: a measuring wheel for linear measurements, a smart tool for measuring running and cross slopes, mobile Wi-Fi hotspots for sending data back to our GIS database, and Android tablets to do the data entry. In thinking about how to measure sidewalk network features, there's always a compromise between speed and accuracy, but this is a combination of tools that's worked well for us over the last number of years. We generally send our field staff out in teams of two. One person takes the readings with the measuring tools, and the other person records the values in the tablet. At the peak of the data collection in 2014 and 2015, we had up to 4 teams, so up to 8 data collection staff working at a time. We designed the data collection process to be paperless, so all of the data and measurements are entered directly into a tablet. We use the tablet's built-in GPS to get an approximate location, which can then be refined using the aerial imagery. And then each feature type is entered in a separate layer, and those updates are saved back to our GIS database using Wi-Fi hotspots. We collect all of the data as point data. Of course, most of the features are single points. For curb ramps, we record 1 point per ramp surface. For sidewalks, which are linear, we record points at several different types of locations, a summary point for each block, a cross slope anywhere the sidewalk crosses the driveway, and any major obstructions or condition issues. We digitize all of the sidewalk segments in our office from aerial photos. We've found that that works better for us than trying to do that in the field. In addition to the measurements, the field staff take photos using the tablet's built-in camera. The photos are then attached to the point and show up in our GIS software. Our inventory is designed to require photos for all curb ramps, but the images are optional for other feature types. During the initial data collection process, those first 2 years, we had a fairly tight timeline, so it was really important to track our progress. And we developed a nightly script that calculated how much of the sidewalk network was complete and gave us a progress report that allowed me to see whether we were on track to complete the data collection on time. With the amount of data involved in this project, quality assurance is a significant task. It's important to catch mistakes as soon as possible so that the field staff can fix them before they leave the area. Because of the complexity of curb ramps, we always have a staff person review them in the office. And for the other feature types, we're able to catch mistakes using automated checks. Many of those automated checks are now enforced using database constraints, so the field staff are actually notified of the issue when they try to save the feature and can fix the problem immediately, which has been a big help. To analyze data from the inventory, we created compliance and condition indices. In these indices, each variable is rated on a scale from 0 to 100 for each feature, and the scales are based on the observed distribution of values as well as the PROAG standards. A feature that's compliant gets a score of 100. Variables are then aggregated using predefined weights, and those weights are based on a review of sidewalk network assessments conducted in other places, as well as the local agency priorities. So to give you an example of kind of how this works, this is an example of a sidewalk of a block with a low compliance index score. So this particular block scored 15 out of 100, which is one of the lowest scores in our inventory. There's vegetation obstructing the sidewalk and decreasing the passable width. There are vertical faults larger than ½ an inch. And somewhere along this block, we measured a cross slope of 10%, which is well above the allowed threshold. So then kind of on the other end of the spectrum, this is a sidewalk that scored 95 out of 100 on our compliance index. It appears to be new. It has a nice, smooth, even surface. The only issue that we noted here was we measured a cross slope of 2.3%, so just above the allowed threshold. Overall, sidewalk compliance is highest in the core of the community and at the fringe. Those are the areas where the pedestrian network was constructed since the passage of the ADA. And between those, then there's sort of a ring of residential neighborhoods with lower scores. And throughout the community, then vertical faults and cross slopes are persistent issues that we see in sidewalks. So turning now to curb ramps, this is an example of a curb ramp with a low compliance score. This one scored 31 out of 100. You can see there are no truncated domes. The obstruction in the, there's an obstruction in the left approach, and we measured a cross slope greater than 10% on this ramp. So a lot of accessibility issues there. And then this is a curb ramp with a high compliance score. This one actually scored a perfect 100. So we have the truncated domes that go to the edge of the ramp. The slopes are good. There are no obstructions in this case. There is a fire hydrant, but it's outside the 4-foot clear path of the left approach. So looking at curb ramp compliance, we see a similar sort of ring pattern where the highest compliance scores are in the core of the community and at the fringe, and their lower scores are in areas constructed prior to modern accessibility standards. In those areas particularly, lack of detectable warnings was often a significant problem, and the landing slopes were also frequently problematic. Part of our analysis involves identifying missing links in the sidewalk network. This is something that's time consuming to do manually when you're looking at a study area with hundreds of miles of sidewalks. So we developed an automated process that uses street center lines and existing sidewalks to identify and draw the missing links in the sidewalk network. And again, there'll be a link later on that has that allows you to get to all of our open source code that we published as part of this project. We developed as part of this work a web application we call the Sidewalk Explorer. This is a public web app that shows the compliance and condition scores and allows visitors to see individual variables and features, as well as photos where we have them. The Sidewalk Explorer helps us to track progress toward a more accessible community by showing the changes between the current data collection year and the baseline year. Speaking of those updates, we update the database annually based on changes to the sidewalk network. Our process is that the local agencies provide data about changes from the previous calendar year, and then I send our data collection staff to those locations during the summer to update the database. The updates are then published in our Sidewalk Explorer app and also made available to the local agencies through our GIS database. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stacy to tell you a little bit more about how the University of Illinois is using these data.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Stacy DiLorenzo. I'm from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And yes, we worked very closely with CUATS and CCRPC that Matt works for on the sidewalk analysis and data collection. And we use a great deal of that data in our 2017 ADA Transition Plan Supplement document, which covers the exterior sidewalks and the access routes, the right-of-ways for the university district. And we continue to update them on projects that we've done and things we've done to update their system. Next. So in our ADA transition plan, basically our goals were to not only take the information that CUATS had done with the, I want to say the public right-of-way areas, but we also captured the access routes, such as the entrances and exits to our buildings that is not considered part of the public right-of-way. So we basically took the information that CUATS provided and we supplemented it with our own, our own information to develop our transition supplement plan. We basically created a priority of our buildings specifically, and the areas that are around the buildings that we figure was our highest priority based upon the usage, where they're located, etc. So after we did the self-evaluation process, then we went out and we did the data measurements and we came up with our plan. Next. So the university district is shown in this map here. It's really hard to see, but basically within this area here, you'll see the blue lines, which are hard to see, but that is the only sidewalk areas and street areas that the university owns. The rest of it is Champaign or Urbana that are surrounding there. So we only concentrated on the sidewalks that we own. Next. And so our prioritization, we had a large committee that came together and from all across the university gave input on how we should prioritize which buildings to focus on, because we have over 600 main buildings and probably up to 1,000 the smaller buildings, if you include like steel buildings or sheds and stuff like that. So our first priority was the residence halls and the academic facilities, most frequently visited and used by disabled persons on campus. The second priority was the high use public facilities on campus that are frequented by not only the campus community, but the public in general, such as the football stadium, the arena that we have on campus, the union. And then the third was the high use educational facilities that have large lecture halls in them, and any other buildings that had not been included in priority 1 and 2 that are high student traffic use. Next. And so we, like I said, we focused on the accessible routes, the routes that go to and from the public right-of-ways, and let's say to or from a parking lot area or a bus stop or something else that was not included in the overall data collection that CUATS did, but that the university owns, and then it also connects into the building, because we wanted to, not only have accessibility throughout the building, but accessibility into the building and throughout campus. So next. So these are the criteria that we used for the self-evaluation. And some of them were not included, some of the items were not included, but all of this data was included, and we took measurements for it, and we came up with a large database. And so this table kind of summarizes the differentiation between the CUATS data that was provided to us and the university designated accessible routes that were in addition to the areas that they had covered. So as you can see from from this table here, the CUATS provided data points were a large percentage of what the total overall data points that we had to take for our plan. So we greatly appreciated the effort that they took and the data that they were provided to us, because we didn't have the resources necessarily to do it ourselves. So that was a large help in developing our transition supplement plan. So next. So we basically took that and then we broke it down and we kind of had the summary of the costs that it would take to bring just these 80 buildings and 80 priority facilities up to the current standards and current regulations. As you can see, one of the highest ones was the cross slope and the running slope for both the sidewalks and the curb ramps. So it came to be about $2.5 million total, which, as a university, we don't just have that lying around. So it's going to be challenging to find the funding, but we know it's something that's extremely important, not only required, but extremely important because we pride ourselves on being one of the best accessible campuses in the country. So we're going to work out a plan and hopefully that funding will come through with it. So the next. And so as you can see, here's our timeline. Our timeline, even though this plan was initiated in 2017, our timeline has not started yet because we have not been given the funding yet. I'm being told if nothing else, falls through the cracks or any major pandemics or anything else comes happening in this next year, that this upcoming fiscal year, which will start tomorrow, is that we will be provided some funding. So we hope to complete all of the priority 1 facilities within 5 years. And then from there, hopefully we'll get more funding in about 5 years and we'll be able to do priority 2 buildings in the next 20 years. And then we'll hopefully finish up all the priority facilities within 30 years. So just to do the deficiencies that CUATs in the public right of way, not the accessible routes, it'll take us about 20 years to correct. So it's a big activity, it's a big project to take on, but we're focused on getting it done and we're focused on having that done. In addition, we've made it mandatory where any new projects on campus, any capital projects or any smaller projects that touch sidewalks or curb ramps or anything, that wherever they touch, when they put that back, it has to incorporate the corrections for the deficiencies and has to bring it up to the latest code. So next. And that's it.
Thank you, Matt and Stacy. Those are great presentations. I know we have a lot of questions for you, so I'll just take time to have you guys answer 2 of them right now. The first was, why did you decide to collect the field data in-house instead of hiring a consultant to do the data collection? And did you ever have individuals with disabilities themselves collecting the data?
Yeah, so for the first question, I think there were a number of reasons we decided to do it ourselves. One was cost. We felt that we could do it sort of more cost effectively if we did it in-house, particularly doing it for the entire MPO area. We had kind of economies of scale that factored into that decision. And then I think a big part of it was wanting to tailor the inventory to the community itself. So like I said, we relied heavily on input from the local agencies in determining what features and variables to collect and how to structure the analysis. And as the MPO, we also used that data extensively in our own planning work. So it was important for us to be able to structure the inventory in a way that would meet those needs. And then in terms of having folks with disabilities participate in the data collection, we have not had that so far. We'd love to have people with disabilities be involved in the process, in the data collection or in other aspects of the process, but we have not had that to date.
And from the university's perspective, we actually had hired a student, a grad student, to do the data collection for the missing point, shall I say, that with the accessible route. One of the big things in the university is to try to provide, to do academic collaborations with departments and the academic units, and to get students really involved into real world applications of what they're learning in the classrooms. And as far as getting anyone that actually has a disability involved in it, we did have representatives from our disability and rehabilitation educational services, excuse me, I have to say, transportation group involved in determining the priorities for the buildings, but we did not actually have them out there taking data points for us. But it kind of like tying on to that is the university plans to do a walkability study in this upcoming year, and of which is we are going to reach out to our DRES department to see if there's any students that have disabilities of any sorts that would be interested in helping us collect the data for the walkability study. We would greatly appreciate that input from their perspective that we just may not think of.
We're going to have a lot of time for questions at the end, but I'll take one more quick question right now. Were transit stops evaluated?
So transit stops were not evaluated as part of this data collection effort, but we have worked with our local transit provider to create a comprehensive database of transit stops. And a lot of the same considerations that went into this inventory were also included there. So not part of the same process, but we do have that data.
And as far as the university is concerned, what we studied basically 100 feet kind of like in a circle around a facility or around the accessible route. So if a bus stop happened to fall in to that area, we did evaluate that infrastructure in that area.
Thank you. Before we take some time to answer the remaining chat pod questions, and we'll loop Carrie back into the mix, we do have our last poll question that we'll pull up. The question is about how your agency supports LPA ADA transition plan implementation. And you'll see when the poll comes up that there's an option to select other. If you have any additional items that you believe are noteworthy, if you could please feel free to email them to Sharon Field after today's webinar. We would love to hear about those. And I think Sharon, if you could include your email in the chat pod, that would be helpful. Great, thank you all. I think we can broadcast the results. This is a question maybe we'll ask everyone if your completed plan was online. So Carrie, just feel free to come back as a panelist.
From the university standpoint, our transition supplement plan is located on the university at the facilities and services website. If anyone wants to take a look at it, they can contact me through my contact information and I can point them to where it is. And then in addition, we have our full-blown ADA transition plan that covers within the facilities also.
And as the MPO, we did not develop a transition plan as part of this process, but the report document is available. The report document for the data collection process is available at the link that's at the bottom of the screen now.
Kara, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I think some of them are online. I will see if I can find them and I'll put them in the chat box.
Thank you. I just saw a great question came in that I think would be applicable to all of you as well. If you had one lesson learned about the ADA transition plan process that you think others could learn from, what would that lesson be? I guess maybe I'll start with Matt. I'll go in order of how I can see you. We'll go Matt, Stacy, and then Carrie.
Sure. Yeah, it's hard to sort of boil it down to just one lesson, but I think one of the things that I've learned definitely is how important relationships are in this work. For us, particularly the relationship between the local agencies and us as the MPO has been really critical in doing this work in a way that's efficient and that benefits the whole community. So I think, you know, both strengthening those relationships through this process, through working together, but also drawing on, you know, past work that we've done together was really, really important.
And same thing kind of on the university standpoint is there's so many different departments on campus, and everybody thinks that their facility is like the most important facility. That you know, we kind of have to set the expectations of what we're going to be doing and when we'll be able to get to each of the facilities to update them and get them up to code and things like that. You know, of course, there's always the budget and the financial, you know, restrictions that you have, but it was a great learning experience for us. I don't, from what we can tell, we did one of these back before, I'm going to say, like, computers were even like a widespread thing. But we weren't able to find all the volumes of it. So it was very, you know, one of the lessons learned is keep good record keeping and make sure you know where those documents are once you've captured that, and don't, you know, let that continuity fall to the side.
So for us, I think our biggest lesson learned is just that, you know, we were wrong about thinking that if we just educated our members and kind of were able to get the input that we eventually were able to get from the state on some jurisdictional issues, and, you know, we had good helpful input from FHWA, but this just wasn't enough, except for those municipalities that are higher income municipalities. And so, you know, even though ideally we would have realized that 5 years before we accepted it, that it just, a lot of them weren't motivated enough to do it unless we provided some assistance.
Thank you. We also had a lot of questions about the next steps after the inventories. So how are the municipalities incorporating this information into their capital planning, and how are you involved in that step? Matt?
So we have not really taken a very active role in kind of assisting the municipalities in using the data. We try to serve as a technical resource, but we leave it up to the local agencies to determine then kind of how they're going to incorporate that data into their transition plans, how they're going to do public input around it, and how then, you know, that gets expressed in terms of their programming going forward. So I think for me, the main thing is just serving as a technical resource, making sure they have a good source of information, but then allowing them to sort of make those decisions.
And as someone who works in the capital planning or capital programs division at the university, is when we have capital projects, we'll use all this data and all this information to determine what items need to be implemented and which items or discrepancies need to be corrected during that. So it helps us with planning, and it also helps us with scoping and budget for the project. So we get it included in the project if possible. And if not, we, like I said, starting this next fiscal year, we will be able to tap into some of the funding that we have been given to make sure that it gets incorporated at the time, so we don't build something and then have to undo it and redo it the correct way.
And for us, I think similar to what Matt was saying, we don't get involved in local municipal budget topics, but we, you know, definitely tell them when there are grant opportunities, and if if they're looking for federal funding, then there is prioritization in our rating and ranking criteria for making improvements based off of the transition plan.
Thank you. Somewhat similarly, when prioritizing these locations and projects, did you provide any assistance or guidance about how locations such as schools, parks, transit opportunities might play a role?
We did provide some general guidance to the local agencies and actually did a very kind of high level analysis of factors that the way we sort of framed it was factors that influence kind of the demand for accessible infrastructure. And so that was made available to the local agencies as part of our report document that was published in 2016. So that was kind of the way that we gave them some high-level ideas about prioritization, but then ultimately it was up to them to decide kind of how to incorporate that into the transition plan, because we know that it plays out a bit differently in each local agency.
Yeah, and from the university standpoint, that helped us. You know, we took some of their guidance as far as prioritization, and then we highly prioritized those areas that you would have disabled traffic going. Like I said, we have this one building that is, you know, it's basically all of our disability. That kind of goes there and uses this facility at all times, all of our students and stuff. And then we also have a residence hall that was kind of tailored to those with disabilities. And then we have another academic hall that's facility that's for veterans, like returning veterans that may have disability. So we focused on areas and such as that, and saying these are our priorities of what we're going to do, because we know they're going to frequent these facilities, so that's how we're going to focus on them. And then again, like I said, the larger buildings that have, you know, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of students coming in and out every day, at least they used to. Hopefully in the fall they will again. And then like places where the public comes that may have a different customer. You know, college students typically tend to be the younger age. But, you know, we also take into account the public facilities that will have people of all ages.
And for us, we're really just using the categories that are in the federal guidance and starting from there with any local additions or changes that they want to make.
Great, thank you. I have a specific question for Matt. Did you overlay your maps to see if there was any correlation between ramps and sidewalks, low scores and low socioeconomic locations?
So we didn't do that as part of this project, but we have done that as part of, for example, our Title VI work, where we look at different disadvantaged populations in the community. These scores actually factor into that analysis, as well as you know, other types of accessibility analysis that we've done. So not kind of directly as part of this project, but these data and these scores are used for that purpose in other planning efforts.
Great, thank you. And for Carrie, you mentioned a letter that went out regarding transition plan requirements. Do you mind sharing that letter somehow with us, or do you have any information on letters regarding self-evaluation, self-analysis requirements?
I mean, I have copies of them. Are you going to send an email out to all the participants? I can send them to one of you, and then you can send them out. It's not something that's already online, so I can't put it in the chat.
Perhaps if I don't want to bombard you with 250 emails, if anyone would like a copy of that letter, perhaps I'll include my email in the chat pod, and I'll be bombarded with those, and I'll make sure everyone gets a copy. Thank you.
Sure.
An additional question for anyone, have any of you considered using AARP members to do any of this work? It sounds like some of those members are already evaluating walkable communities for different efforts.
I will say for us, we've had folks who are seniors. I don't know if they were AARP members specifically, but we've had folks who are seniors participate in the data collection and have been, grateful for their perspectives. In addition to, obviously we're in a university town, so a lot of the folks that we hire to do data collection are going to be students or student aged, but we have had, a diverse age range of folks participate.
And for the university, we really have not taken that into account specifically for the university property. We understand that we're within a bigger community. However, our demographic is 18 to 25, 18 to 30 is our typical student age. So we really have not focused on let's say the elderly.
No, we haven't either.
Thank you. I think maybe just one last question. Have any of you reviewed on-street parking for accessibility in these efforts?
That was not part of our inventory, no.
It was definitely part of the university's inventory. Let's say where the handicap spaces are. We have a certain requirement to have a certain number of handicap spaces in each location. We typically try to keep those off of the streets in parking lots themselves. But as you saw from my one slide that I showed, that was part of our analysis for the accessible routes.
We are not including anything related to parking.
All right, thank you, everyone. This has been a great discussion. Honestly, I could have facilitated questions for another half hour. So many great questions just keep rolling in. So I'll thank you all for participating. This webinar has been recorded and will be posted in the future. I want to take this time to offer a special thanks to our speakers, Carrie Ward, Matt Yoder, and Stacy DiLorenzo, as well as our fantastic ASL interpreters. And I want to offer a reminder to everyone to please register for our next upcoming webinar on July 14th. The information is posted on the slide for all of you to see. And I hope to see you there. Thank you again, everyone, and please enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you for facilitating.